Welcome back to the show. Today, as we mentioned earlier, we've got Merril Gilbert from TraceTrust. Merril, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It is a pleasure to be here. As you said, my name is Merril Gilbert. I'm the co-founder and CEO of TraceTrust, and we have been a leading agency since 2015 in setting standards for good manufacturing practices, safe, reliable experiences for consumers in the cannabis and hemp universe.
I love it. And just so you know, I just got back from the cannabis conference, and I'm so happy to hear GMP mentioned again, good manufacturing practices, because so many things within our space, in the cannabis space, are not done to those standards. And it's become kind of a strange thing, meaning that we're not held to a standard that is the same for every other industry in terms of globalization of agricultural goods, which cannabis is. It's just another agricultural good. And in terms of normalization and mainlining, that's very important. From what standpoint do you address GMP as TraceTrust?
Yeah, that is such a great lead into the work, right? So when we came into this industry, we came from the agriculture and food and beverage worlds, right? So we were already used to good practices, safe use, all of the things. This is such a ripple effect, right? When you think about the foundations of every other industry, how it affects your finances, how it affects your risk management, how it affects your insurance premiums, all of that. When we came into cannabis, and our first, aha moment of why we focus on this was because if you were going to open up these products to the general public, it was not going to be the experience they had in college, right? Or
Right.
the brownie, right? They were going to have unpredictable experiences. We certainly know from the genetics and the cultivation of where we are today, those plants are way more nuanced and potent. And we
Correct.
also set about in the testing protocols early on to keep it at the plant level, so pesticides, molds, etc., but all of the emphasis being on how high that THC was, right? Nothing about terpenes, nothing about the other cannabinoids. And then we get the hemp bill, which allows for us to have CBD. And now here we are, several years later. And what's our biggest risk is these adulterated, products that are seen widely in states with no legal access. So setting those standards came very much from the fact of what you said. This is a plant, it's an active ingredient, and it is medicine. And all three of those have completely separate need states, stakeholders, and risks protocols that have to be in place.
Yeah.
So good harvesting practices, good cultivation practices lead into that first level from harvest into what the next step is, right? So making sure that you identify the things that are going to be contaminants or potential contaminants, making it a safe space for your employees to work and handle these materials. And because of it not just being limited to outdoors, you have all other different protocols that need to be set in place for the different growing environments that you're creating.
Right. And few people understand, if you're a layman in the business, is just a consumer, GMP doesn't mean much to you, but it is a standard and a backbone of agricultural industries and other industries too, about what the protocols are for getting products to market. And recently I have been talking to a group out of Germany about GMP and whether or not I was going to be taking my product to Germany. But one of the big standards was, are you GMP? And currently in the state of California, at least, there's not a lot of manufacturers who are GMP certified, very few, in fact. So it's a standard that's going to have to be adopted in the cannabis industry to come into a normal avenue toward selling and business worldwide.
Right. So those practices are crucial. You don't buy an electronic product that doesn't have a UL standard on it. You don't buy a certified organic product in the grocery store without a third-party verification audit system in it. You don't sell into a Safeway or a Whole Foods or a CVS unless you have an accredited GMP good manufacturing practice audit
Right.
certification level, right? So these are the norms for which, again, all regular industries that we're used to in our everyday lives adhere to. We set out back in 15, 16 to work with a whole group of us throughout the country to do this. We're very active in ASTM. We're very active in we wrote the first HACCP and food safety training programs that, have been adopted by many of the recognized American and international groups, right? Because these are what makes this not just that druggy culture or, hidden,
Yeah.
prohibitive world, right? These are mainstream businesses. This is mainstream access to something that I might want to use recreational or something that I might want to use for a different point of time in my day
Right. So let's
or my needs.
let's talk about that too, mainstreaming normalization. Okay. When I got into the business on the business side in 2017, normalization and mainstreaming was a big buzzword. It was like, let's get, the soccer mom into it. Let's get the dad who needs to relax into it. Let's get them Cali sober, off of alcohol, and a lot of these things. This has just not happened. And I think it has a lot to do with the reluctance of growers, for instance, to expend the money into getting standards going and follow those practices. And they also don't see the value of audits and agricultural audits. It's hard for, and I get it, because it's hard for a cannabis grower to say, well, sure, I'm going to set around $15,000 a year aside to have a continuous audit program. And the reason is a continuous audit program gives you standards that year in and year out you can look at and say, this year I did this, look at what my yield was. So actually that money is well spent. Is this reluctance you've seen on your side of the equation?
Yes and no. So the
Okay.
reluctance definitely is in the traditional market, right? Because it's another hurdle and another expense. And it's also another area that's new because that's not how you've always done it, right? So
Right.
you don't understand the benefits when you go through a program, right? These programs don't just look at your crop. These programs look at your hiring practices, your other materials that you bring in to work with,
Sure.
and your vendors and supplies, your training protocols, the standard operating procedures that we call, right? And it's everything from the seed, not to the sale, which is, a whole nother world, but the seed to what you end up putting out into the marketplace, right? Ideally, the whole purpose behind that is if God forbid something did happen, you could recall it because everywhere it went from the
Right.
day that it was put into the ground to the day that it was sold into the market. So that's one.
A cost
The other
savings, a cost savings
it,
too. Let's
it's a,
stop you there. It's a cost savings because if you can track it to that point at which in the stage it occurred, you will have the ability to contain cost and expenditures.
but not just with that particular group, every group thereafter, your learnings, your data, your information. Hey, these genetics work fabulous. Now, how do I play with it and market it? And this comes back to the value, right? So when we
Right.
said we're going to put all our value into the market, into potency, we just focused on that, making that the level of value to the consumer. And it's not the value to the consumer. The consumer wants to trust you that I'm going to have that experience for whatever I'm trying to be. Something for after I work out, something to make me, be more social, right? Whatever that is,
And repeatability. So you know what it's going to be the next
consistency.
time. Yes.
Exactly. And even if it's not exactly that, I can anticipate what it would be, right? Because remember, we're kind of spoiled here in the West, particularly in California. We have access to the most
Right.
beautiful, diverse amounts of products. You yourself made like an everyday item with sugar, right?
Yeah.
I can replace this with this. So, I mean, the everyday part, we're very spoiled here. But think of all of these states have come on board since you and I've even known each other, right? They don't have that. and they don't have the established market of that. And so it's just like you're going to go out and you have your first exciting moment of being able to buy something legally accessible to you, just as you do, a bottle of wine, and then come home and have like a wildly crazy experience because
Not,
it's too
yeah,
much.
not good.
Not good, right?
No.
So, how does that build consistency and quality? How does that build value? And all the way through the supply chain can be profitable, but we haven't made it profitable because we've made it such a hurdle. And to your point of, we've made the thought of a GMP or an audit process seem not only unattainable and an extra expense, but because also it doesn't, the 280E part, the financial, we don't equate it with our other insurance and risk and training and hiring and staffing
Expenses.
standards.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, let's talk about that for a second too, because I know that we briefed each other prior to the call about the 280E issue, right? It, to me, when I first heard this, I think our mutual friend Bill Rafferty pointed this out to us from White Group. It was like, if a farm cannot take an audit expense as a 280E cost of goods sold expense, which it clearly is because it's aiding the product to be better and it's making sure that the standards are there prior to even cannabis testing at the other end of the equation, that doesn't make sense. And I have to say that, I think extensive lobbying needs to be done from the agricultural side, meaning the grower side, that they need to go and start saying, you need to address these things to make us able to make our products better. And we need to change this. And unfortunately, I think that's at the federal level. So lobbying is quite expensive. So I don't know where that's going to go. I pray every day that the Safe Banking Act passes, but who knows? That's looking less and less likely by the day because I think they're making so much money. Why would you change? Right?
Well, because I think they also, we are seeing some movements on both sides of the aisle when they start to see those taxes start to come into their communities, right? And it's all
Right.
of a sudden they're like, oh, maybe we need to kind of rethink this, right? And so that's one. But we do have the Farm Bill coming up here in just a couple of months. And this has still been a very hard, nut to crack. And it comes back to, again, who are the people talking about this? Yes, each of our, we need to bring the ag groups together. We need to bring the research on the medical side together. We need to, right? There's a lot of that, but there's also the media, and they
Right.
need to get out of that, again, stoner culture, which is a
Dr-
very white bread
the
world,
druggy
or it's like
culture.
exactly, it's the gangster, so now it's a black thing, and then it's, the whole cartel, which is now the whole Hispanic thing. Like we have to get through the racism. We need to get through the part of this of, this is an active ingredient. And just like other active ingredients, you can access this in a safe way. And you're going to learn when and where you do this, just like you do, again, that glass of wine or that beer, because you already know it's a normal, everyday occurrence.
Yeah, let's back up a little too. And what you just mentioned is very important because equity has always been something that's a big buzzword in the cannabis community as in terms of motivation for people of color and in certain communities to push into the market and have equity within that framework. So although DEI gets a lot of bad press, it has some good backbones to it, certainly, meaning that without diversity, equity, and inclusion, there won't be an ability for people of color to and women too and others to participate in a market. And it's just, there's so many nuances here. I also want to back up to the Farm Bill. Define that for the people who are watching, because there's an overall kind of feeling that the Farm Bill actually passed. Can you clarify that for people?
Yes and no. I'm not the
Okay.
full authority, but let me just give you kind of the framework
Yeah.
without getting
Better
myself in
than what I
trouble.
have. Go ahead.
Where's Bill when we need him? But here's the part of it. So about 2018, knowing that this is out there, and also, again, traditional industrial farming, saw this opportunity because hemp, which has been farmed and cultivated for thousands of years,
Millennia.
and millennia, and it's got two purposes here that we're talking about today in the United States, right? And that is one, cultivated hemp for consumption. So this is your CBD oils and your topicals, et cetera. But then there's industrial hemp, which is fibers,
Sure.
right? And so that's a
Clothing.
very different, exactly, bricks.
Yeah.
So it's a very different group. But the USDA and the FDA is still trying to struggle with this ingestible topical, touching your body. Had to come up with something because it was becoming widely available, and we were also having this state by state legal access of cannabis. We need to separate it. And so they came in and said, if it's, again, potency, there's less than detectable 3% of THC in the plant as hemp, then it could be used in some types of products. So you saw, this is 2018, a huge influx of CBD everywhere. CBD at the gas station, CBD at the spa, CBD at Circle K, right? Wherever. It
DH,
was,
D9, all the derivatives.
well, that's what's happened today, right? So
Right.
that's where we went from, okay, don't know where it's from, don't know anything about it, but I get CBD, right? It's cannabis, it's going to be great, to people getting violently ill. Again, here's your risk assessment, because now we have
some deaths. There have been 4 unfortunate
we have
deaths this year. Yeah.
That is all unregulated product.
Correct.
I have a whole series on good label, bad label, which just talks about like QR codes to nowhere, or no, danger, don't ever.
So we lost you briefly there, but where can people find this series on the label?
Oh, it's on our TraceTrust YouTube channel.
And what's that address?
And we have all kinds. Just TraceTrust.
Okay.
It's one word, TraceTrust, all one word. And obviously TraceTrust.com. And we also, share a lot of this on our LinkedIn channel as well. And you can find me at LinkedIn at Merril Gilbert. But yeah, so, we talk so much about, we're educators also, right? We're trainers, educators. We really believe in really sustainable practices and systems and access, right? So we go back to that whole equity. And again, where do we continue to see pushback? We see pushback whenever there is progress, right? Whenever we're expanding into something that is new and better for people and better for the planet, there's always pushback. This week's target is funding women, right? So we know traditionally in all industries, doesn't matter what you're in, women get about, well, they were in cannabis, I have to say, initially in 2018, 19, headed into 2020, we had about 25, 30% of the C-suites in the industry. We were getting access to funding. And then immediately when things started to shift, we started to lose that. Not only the seats and the roles has expanded, more, corporate money came in, but funding, right? So women traditionally in all funding are only getting less than 10% of all access to capital for any business. In cannabis, it is less than 8%, almost 7%. And if you are a woman of color, it's about 1 to 3%.
Let's talk about
not
this
a sustainable.
No, but let's talk about this a little more too, because I have personal relationships with women, in terms of business relationships. And what I have heard is from these women is there's a tremendous lack of women actually supporting other women in the investment community. And I find that it's a conundrum, because the very portion of society that should be supporting a like group is not doing their part. So I think it's important that other women who are in the investment community understand that these are opportunities and they're not just fly by night. There are some dynamic women involved in the cannabis industry who have amazing ideas. Shout out to you, Annie, at the Galley, and many other people, Christine, at the Peoples, and Charlene Cabet, all these great women who are doing great things. And there's many, many, many others that I know, but they're not getting access to capital. So if you are a woman out there and you've got a little money on the side, start looking at some alternative investments.
Well, and let's talk about women as business managers, right? Because who manages the household budgets? Who's spending? Who's your consumer? Who's allocating for this? Women outperform, and this is not me just making up data, because God knows how much I love to make up statistics, right? But this is real proof, right? You can look these kinds of numbers up. Women outperform.
Yeah.
And in their investments, return on investments, at a higher level than anyone else. And this is universal, right?
Let's address that though for a second. They do care, but also the level of investment is it tends to be very conservative. Because in that, and I understand that it's about, because women are they have the children in the family, they're looking after the family, they're making sure. So conservatism within the budgetary framework is a natural bred in thing, because you don't want to run out of money. You want to feed your kids, you want to make sure they have health care. So you have to be conservative. And I do think that does affect the model a little bit too, because this can be speculative, right? So it requires effort on everybody's part.
Absolutely. And coming back to supporting other women. Yeah, one is I am encouraged, because there are, and again, all sectors, women creating funds for women, which is great. And teaching about investing, right? So learning how to do this at younger ages. And that is all good. I also, when we talk about Annie and Christine and stuff, we also, Kara Reed, who started the Women Employed in Cannabis Association, came up with these 4 Ps that I think, we still have access to for people to commit to. But I think it's really important about women as a whole, and also in any equity situation. And so, one is to pay, right? So if you hire somebody, pay them.
Yep.
If they work for you, pay them.
Right.
And the next one is to promote, right? So promote women within your organization, promote women like you just did, calling out the women that you respect. Any opportunity you have a chance to partner with women, right? I need a graphic designer. Oh, I need a packaging designer. Try to hire a woman first, or a person, of color. Try to give them. And then protect, right? Don't disparage people. Even if you have a problem with them, deal with it directly. Don't do it in public.
Don't run them down.
Don't run them down.
Right. Makes perfect sense.
And all of those things make us better as humans, but also make us a stronger industry, because we were founded on this. We were founded on these principles of this could be something good for people.
Yeah. That's the baseline of it, isn't it? I mean, it's just this is a medicine. Cannabis is beneficial to so many people, and I keep saying it on the 160 episodes of Dazed and Infused that I've done on Project Terroir, on Highly Capitalized. Is the mainstreaming and the adoption has to change, and as we are in a world of continued alcohol abuse, continued violence inspired by the use of alcohol, continued incarceration through alcoholic use, and spousal abuse, child abuse. It goes on and on and on. And there's one culprit. It's alcohol. Okay. I have had my own struggles with alcohol in the past. I quit drinking for many years. And, we've got to start calling it what it is. Alcohol is a dangerous drug. Cannabis, except if you've had many of the stories on my Dazed and Infused podcast about, tell me a stunning story. 90% of these things have to do with brownies, right? and they are a terrible, terrible thing with alcohol that needs to be addressed. And don't treat cannabis the same way as alcohol. It's just ridiculous. Let's talk briefly about what you've got coming up. You've got a conference coming up. It's been delayed a little bit, but let's talk about what that is and when it's going to happen.
Thank you. Yeah, so it was supposed to be at the end of September, but we were going up against some other competitors that weren't there when we first started. But the vision was, again, part of who we are in TraceTrust, right? So we
Right.
always wanted to lead the industry forward to its possibilities, to its potentials all along the way. And one of the ways that we also wanted to be able to do that was to then become the Davos Aspen Institute of the cannabis, the thought leaders, right? How do we come together? And it comes back to what you've said throughout this about all the disciplines, right? So the cultivators, so the medical side, so, the finance. How do we lead towards better experiences to the future, to standardization, to governance, to policy, right? How do we work? And also not to have it come in to be, oh, the taxes are too hard. Oh, it's too hard to compete. Oh, like it wasn't about all of that. It was about we are here today. Here's all the countries, here's all the states, here's all the progress. Let's break this down. Let's have some actionable items. So the speakers themselves were all selected because they didn't just come up here and go, hey, this is how I do it. It was like, this is what we're doing. Here's how it works. Here's how this can work for you. Actionable items that you can take and use immediately, things that we could build upon. An anthology, collecting all of that through the media and video collection that day, but the writings, people's white papers, people's research, making it accessible and usable. Protocols on standards, taking this, in investment side, right? How do we build products for that are going to affect these different needs, right? These different, you don't sell to everybody.
Right.
So, and then what, more
Good
importantly,
point.
that we're optimistic, right? What are we still in this for? Because all of us, I mean, my husband is like so angry at me going, well, you're supposed to make millions of dollars in this industry and you've like put us into a hole. Like, I don't even understand how this happened.
He needs to talk to my wife. I've had a similar conversation.
So it's also about the sustainability, not of the environment, but the sustainability of the industry as a whole.
Yeah, and I like your go forward.
And where it's got
Yeah, and
forward.
moving forward from that date, rather than dwelling on the injuries and the injustices of the past, moving forward and always pushing that ball down the road rather than just kicking it around on the ground. I appreciate that. And so what I'd like to do, Merril, is we have gone about 40 minutes now. Let's do this again closer to February and talk about that conference in specific terms and get you some press on that so that people will sign up and enjoy your content.
I love it. And I'm just going to share one little piece about the conference too,
Sure.
that I think is unique, because it's not a conference. The reason it's a symposium is because that's a group, coming together for educational and sharing of ideas.
Right.
And it's also was not sponsored, right? We specifically chose not to have sponsors. So that's why people, we were only, funding this through the ticket sales and, asking people to maybe purchase an extra ticket for our scholarship funds for those, marginal groups that could not afford. And partly because we didn't want any of the conversation and actions to be inhibited by another agenda of,
Relationships that exist.
Right. That you were there because you really believed in us moving forward, because you felt like you had to represent somebody or another entity, right? And so it's really carefully thought about in that sense, that we felt like it was a bold move, but we felt it was really an important move.
I like that. Not being beholden to some other person. It's great. It's a great idea. So, Merril, where can people find TraceTrust online?
So TraceTrust.com. You can find us on LinkedIn. That is our main platform since we speak mostly, to industry and people. So it's Merril Gilbert at Merril Gilbert at LinkedIn. You can email me directly, Merril@TraceTrust.com. And yeah, we have so many more things. We haven't even talked about how to raise money,
Yeah. Well,
how to make money, how to raise money, how to keep money.
well, what I'd like to do is have you back specifically on an episode of Highly Capitalized, and we're going to talk about that and how people can get out there and make money, earn money, and actually raise money. So until then, we're going to leave it here. And thank you so much, Merril, for being with us. And it's nice to talk to you in business terms here. And I'll see you at the next social event in the cannabis space, I'm sure. And much more continued success to you. I know things are going to turn the tide pretty soon here, and we're all going to do a little bit better. Seems like things are getting a little more business oriented, and that's good for all of us.
Well, thank you for having me. And this is such a great platform, and I'm so excited for all your success here.
Thank you, Merril. And we'll see you all back here on this network and with other exciting guests. And look for more interviews from Merril Gilbert soon on this channel. Until then, I'm Latham Woodward, your host, and we'll see you.